You woke up this morning and within the first 60 minutes did 5 things that told your body to store visceral fat, not burn it, store it. You do this every single morning. Same routine, same order, same mistakes. And that deadly fat wrapping around your liver, kidneys, and intestines gets thicker every day because your morning is programmed to feed it. Right now, your body has a 90-minute metabolic window after waking. During this window, cortisol peaks. Insulin sensitivity shifts. Growth hormone is still circulating from sleep. What you do in those 90 minutes determines whether your body spends the entire day burning visceral fat or locking it down permanently. Miss that window, game over until tomorrow. And you've been missing it for years. Here's what nobody told you. After 60, your hormonal morning response is completely different. Cortisol stays elevated longer. Insulin spikes faster. Leptin signaling is delayed. The morning routine that worked at 40 is now biochemically programming your body to hold abdominal fat no matter what you eat the rest of the day. A $270 billion weight loss industry doesn't explain this, because a customer who fixes 5 morning habits for free stops buying their supplements, shakes, and meal plans. And here's the brutal truth. That belly fat isn't lazy tissue. It's a hormone-producing organ, pumping out inflammatory chemicals, driving insulin resistance, increasing your risk of heart attack, stroke, and diabetes every hour it stays. You can't outrun it. You can't starve it. You have to outsmart it. And it starts before breakfast. You dieted, walked, counted calories, and your belly never changed. Because the war was lost before 8 a.m. every single day. In this video, we will reveal 5 morning habits that melt visceral fat after 60, ranked from least to most powerful. Number 1 takes 2 minutes and triggers fat oxidation for the next 12 hours straight. References are in the description. How old are you and where are you watching from? Drop it below. I read every comment. I reply personally. Now let's start with number 5. This habit takes place before your feet even hit the floor, and it resets your fat-burning hormones instantly. Number 5. Get direct morning sunlight within 30 minutes of waking. This might sound too simple to actually work, but the science behind morning sunlight and visceral fat loss is remarkably strong. When natural sunlight hits your eyes in the first 30 minutes after you wake up, it triggers a cascade of hormonal responses that directly influence how your body stores and burns fat throughout the entire day. The most important of these responses involves cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone. Cortisol naturally peaks in the morning in what scientists call the cortisol awakening response. When this peak happens at the right time and at the right intensity, it sets your metabolism up for efficient fat burning all day long. But when this rhythm gets disrupted, which happens very easily in adults over 60 who spend most mornings indoors, cortisol stays elevated at the wrong times. Chronically elevated cortisol has been directly linked to visceral fat accumulation. A study published in the journal Endocrinology found that older adults with disrupted cortisol rhythms had 32% more visceral fat than those with healthy, well-timed cortisol patterns. Morning sunlight is the most powerful natural tool to reset this rhythm. A separate study from Northwestern University followed over 54 participants and found that those who got the majority of their light exposure early in the day had significantly lower body mass index and less abdominal fat, regardless of how much they ate or how active they were. The researchers concluded that the timing of light exposure was an independent factor in weight regulation. The reason this works comes down to your circadian clock, which is essentially your body's internal 24-hour timer that controls everything from when you feel hungry to when your cells burn fat versus store it. Morning sunlight, specifically the blue light wavelengths present in natural daylight, enters through your eyes and signals your suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny region in your brain that acts as the master clock. This signal tells your entire body that the day has started and it is time to shift into an active, fat-burning metabolic state. Without this signal, your body stays in a sluggish, fat-storing mode for hours longer than it should. For adults over 60, this becomes even more critical because the lens of the eye naturally yellows with age, filtering out some of the blue light wavelengths. This means older adults need more morning light exposure to get the same circadian benefit that younger people get automatically. The best approach is to step outside within 30 minutes of waking and spend at least 10 to 15 minutes in direct sunlight. You do not need to stare at the sun. Simply being outside with your face oriented toward the sky is enough. If you live in a cloudy climate, you still benefit because overcast skies still deliver significantly more lux, which is the unit of light intensity, than any indoor lighting. Even a cloudy morning delivers around 10,000 lux, while typical indoor lighting provides only about 200 to 500 lux. If getting outside is truly not possible, sitting next to a large window with the curtains fully open is your next best option, though it is less effective since glass filters out some beneficial wavelengths. Combine this with your morning coffee or tea, and you have built the habit into something you already do. This one simple change resets your cortisol rhythm, improves your insulin sensitivity throughout the day, and begins shifting your body away from visceral fat storage and toward fat oxidation. Now let us move to a habit that works from the inside out the moment you wake up. Number 4. Drink a strategic hydration protocol before anything else. What you drink in the first 15 minutes after waking up has a surprisingly powerful effect on visceral fat, and most people over 60 are getting this completely wrong. After 7 to 8 hours of sleep, your body is in a mildly dehydrated state. Your blood is thicker, your metabolism has slowed to its lowest point, and your cells are essentially waiting for a signal to wake up and start working. Drinking water first thing in the morning provides that signal, but the way you do it matters enormously. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that drinking approximately 500 milliliters of water, which is about 2 cups, increased metabolic rate by 30% within 10 minutes. This thermogenic effect, meaning the body generating heat and burning calories to process the water, lasted for over 40 minutes. Now, 30% might not sound dramatic on its own, but when you multiply that boost across every single morning for months, it adds up to a meaningful amount of additional calorie burn, and much of that energy comes from stored fat. What makes this even more relevant for visceral fat specifically is the connection between hydration and cortisol. Research from the University of Connecticut found that even mild dehydration, as little as 1.5% body water loss, significantly elevated cortisol levels. As we discussed with sunlight, elevated cortisol drives visceral fat storage. So by hydrating immediately upon waking, you are actively suppressing one of the hormonal triggers that causes your body to pack fat around your organs. For people over 60, this is especially important because the thirst mechanism weakens with age. Studies show that older adults are 40% less likely to feel thirsty even when their bodies are already dehydrated. This means many seniors walk around in a chronic state of mild dehydration without realizing it, and their cortisol levels reflect that. Adding lemon to your morning water provides additional benefits that go beyond simple hydration. Lemon contains a compound called D-limonene, and research published in the European Journal of Pharmacology found that D-limonene helped reduce fat accumulation in animal models by improving lipid metabolism. While human studies are still building, the combination of hydration plus the digestive stimulating properties of citrus creates a powerful morning ritual. Another excellent addition is a small pinch of unrefined sea salt, which provides trace minerals like magnesium and potassium that support cellular hydration at a deeper level than plain water alone. This is not about drinking salt water. It is about adding roughly a quarter teaspoon to your full glass, which is barely noticeable in taste but helps your cells actually absorb and retain the water you are drinking. Without adequate electrolytes, much of the water you drink passes straight through without fully hydrating your tissues. The optimal protocol is straightforward. Keep a glass or bottle of water on your nightstand, so it is the very first thing you reach for. Fill it with about 500 milliliters of room temperature or slightly warm water. Cold water works too, and some research suggests cold water may slightly increase the thermogenic effect, but warm water tends to be gentler on an empty stomach, which matters more for older adults who may have sensitive digestion. Squeeze in half a lemon and add that tiny pinch of salt. Drink it slowly over 5 to 10 minutes before you have coffee, tea, or food. This gives your digestive system time to wake up, primes your metabolism, lowers cortisol, and begins the process of mobilizing stored fat for energy. A study in the journal Frontiers in Nutrition confirmed that adults who consistently hydrated before eating had measurably better metabolic markers over a 12-week period compared to those who drank their fluids alongside or after meals. This next habit is where things start getting really powerful for burning visceral fat specifically. Number 3. Do 20 to 30 minutes of fasted morning movement. Moving your body before eating breakfast is one of the most effective visceral fat burning strategies that exists, and for adults over 60, the research is overwhelmingly clear on this. When you exercise in a fasted state, meaning you have not eaten since the night before, your insulin levels are at their lowest point of the day. Insulin is the hormone that tells your body to store fat, and when insulin is low, your body has no choice but to turn to stored fat for fuel. A groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism compared two groups of adults. Both groups did the same exercise at the same intensity. The only difference was that one group exercised before breakfast and the other group exercised after breakfast. The fasted group burned 20% more fat during their workout, and crucially, the fat they burned came disproportionately from visceral stores rather than subcutaneous fat. The researchers explained that when insulin is low and glycogen stores from the liver are partially depleted after an overnight fast, the body preferentially targets visceral fat because it is more metabolically active and easier to mobilize than the fat under your skin. This is exactly the kind of targeted fat loss that people over 60 need, because visceral fat is the type that causes the most health damage. Now, here is the good news. You do not need to do intense exercise to get this benefit. In fact, for adults over 60, moderate intensity movement is actually better for fat oxidation than high-intensity exercise. A study from the University of Bath found that walking at a brisk pace for 30 minutes in a fasted state produced the highest rate of fat oxidation compared to both higher and lower intensities. When you push too hard, your body shifts from burning fat to burning glucose, which defeats the purpose. The sweet spot is an effort level where you can still hold a conversation, but you feel slightly out of breath. This could be a brisk walk around your neighborhood, a session on a stationary bike, light swimming, or even a combination of gentle bodyweight movements at home. The key is consistency and timing, not intensity. Another important factor for older adults is that morning exercise has been shown to lower cortisol levels for the rest of the day. A study in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that participants who exercised in the morning had 25% lower afternoon cortisol levels compared to those who exercised in the evening. Since cortisol drives visceral fat storage, this morning-specific benefit creates a double advantage. You burn visceral fat during the exercise itself, and you reduce the hormonal signal that creates new visceral fat for the remaining 23 hours of the day. To get maximum benefit, aim for 20 to 30 minutes of movement before your first meal. Start with whatever feels comfortable. If you are currently sedentary, even a 10-minute walk counts, and you can build from there. Wear comfortable shoes, bring water if you need it, and focus on keeping a steady pace rather than pushing for speed or distance. If weather is an issue, walking in place, gentle yoga, or following along with a low-impact exercise video at home works perfectly well. The important thing is that your stomach is empty and your body is tapping into stored energy. Over time, this single habit reshapes your body composition by specifically reducing the visceral fat that wraps around your organs. A 16-week study published in Obesity found that older adults who did moderate fasted morning exercise 5 days per week reduced their visceral fat by an average of 7.4%, even without any dietary changes whatsoever. But the habit coming up next has an even bigger impact on what your body does with fat all day long. Number 2. Eat a high-protein breakfast with healthy fats. What you eat as your first meal of the day determines whether your body spends the next several hours burning visceral fat or storing more of it. And for adults over 60, getting this meal right is absolutely non-negotiable. Protein is the most important macronutrient for visceral fat loss, and front-loading it at breakfast creates metabolic advantages that last until you go to sleep. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that adults who consumed 25 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast had 50% less visceral fat gain over a 12-month period compared to those who ate high-carbohydrate breakfasts with the same total calories. The reason is something called the thermic effect of food. Your body uses energy to digest and process everything you eat. But protein requires significantly more energy to process than carbohydrates or fat. Roughly 20 to 35% of the calories in protein are burned just during digestion, compared to only 5 to 15% for carbohydrates. This means a high-protein breakfast literally forces your metabolism to work harder from the very start of the day. But there is another mechanism that makes protein even more powerful specifically for visceral fat. Protein triggers the release of a satiety hormone called peptide YY, which reduces appetite for hours after eating. A study in the journal Cell Reports found that higher peptide YY levels were associated with lower visceral fat independent of total calorie intake. In other words, the appetite-suppressing effect of protein indirectly reduces visceral fat by preventing the overeating and insulin spikes that drive fat storage around the organs. For adults over 60, protein at breakfast serves a third critical function, which is preserving lean muscle mass. After age 60, you lose muscle at an accelerated rate in a process called sarcopenia. Less muscle means a slower resting metabolism, which means your body burns fewer calories at rest and is more likely to store excess energy as visceral fat. Research published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that older adults who ate at least 25 grams of protein at their first meal maintained significantly more muscle mass over a 3-year period than those who distributed protein evenly or backloaded it at dinner. The ideal breakfast for visceral fat loss combines protein with healthy fats and minimizes refined carbohydrates. Eggs are one of the best options because they provide roughly 6 grams of complete protein each along with choline, a nutrient that supports liver function and fat metabolism. Having 3 to 4 eggs gives you 18 to 24 grams of protein right there. Add a quarter of an avocado for healthy monounsaturated fats, which a study in the journal Diabetes Care found specifically reduced visceral fat when they replaced refined carbohydrates in the diet. Greek yogurt with nuts and seeds is another excellent option, providing around 15 to 20 grams of protein per serving along with beneficial fats from the nuts. If you prefer something warm, a small portion of salmon or sardines with vegetables gives you both high-quality protein and omega-3 fatty acids, which research in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry has shown reduced visceral fat by lowering inflammation and improving insulin sensitivity. The foods to avoid at breakfast are the ones most people over 60 have been eating for decades. Toast with jam, cereal with milk, muffins, bagels, orange juice, and oatmeal with sugar are all high in refined carbohydrates that spike insulin quickly. That insulin spike tells your body to stop burning fat and start storing it. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition directly compared a high-protein breakfast to an isocaloric high-carbohydrate breakfast and found that the high-protein group had 33% lower insulin levels over the following 4 hours. Lower insulin means more time in fat-burning mode and less time in fat-storing mode. And now, Here's the number one most powerful morning habit for melting visceral fat after 60. Number 1. Practice time-restricted eating with a defined morning window. This is the single most impactful habit for visceral fat loss after 60, and the clinical evidence behind it is nothing short of remarkable. Time-restricted eating means consuming all of your daily food within a specific window of hours and fasting for the remaining hours. For visceral fat loss in older adults, the research consistently points to an eating window of approximately 8 to 10 hours, starting in the morning as the optimal approach. A clinical trial published in Cell Metabolism followed overweight adults who ate within a 10-hour window for 12 weeks without changing what they ate or how much they ate. The participants reduced their visceral fat by an average of 14%, lost body weight, improved their cholesterol levels, and reported better sleep and more energy. The researchers emphasized that no dietary changes were made. The participants ate the same foods in the same amounts. The only variable was when they ate. This is the study I mentioned in the introduction, and it changed how many scientists think about visceral fat. The mechanism behind time-restricted eating is deeply connected to circadian biology. Your body's ability to process food, manage insulin, and burn fat fluctuates dramatically throughout the day. Research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that insulin sensitivity is highest in the morning and declines steadily as the day progresses. This means the exact same meal produces a significantly larger insulin spike when eaten at 9 p.m. compared to 9 a.m. Since insulin drives visceral fat storage, eating your meals earlier in the day and stopping food intake by early evening aligns your eating pattern with your body's natural metabolic rhythm. For adults over 60, this alignment becomes even more critical because insulin sensitivity naturally decreases with age. A study in the journal Aging found that older adults who practiced time-restricted eating for 8 weeks improved their insulin sensitivity by 36% and reduced inflammatory markers by 11%, both of which directly combat visceral fat accumulation. Another powerful mechanism involves autophagy, which is your body's cellular cleanup process. During the fasting hours, particularly after about 12 to 14 hours without food, your cells begin breaking down damaged components and recycling them. Research from the journal Nature Communications found that autophagy preferentially targets fat stored around the organs, essentially cleaning out visceral fat as part of its maintenance routine. This process slows down significantly with age, but time-restricted eating has been shown to reactivate it. The practical application is simpler than most people expect. Choose your eating window based on your lifestyle, but aim for something like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. You eat your first meal at the start of this window, ideally the high-protein breakfast we discussed, and you finish your last meal or snack by the end of this window. Outside these hours, you consume only water, black coffee, or plain tea with no calories. You do not need to change what you eat at all in the beginning. The simple act of compressing your eating into this window produces measurable visceral fat loss. A study from the Salk Institute found that mice fed a high-fat diet within a restricted window gained 28% less visceral fat than mice eating the same diet across the full day, proving that timing alone has a dramatic impact on where fat is stored. For older adults just starting out, begin with a 12-hour window, which most people find very manageable since it simply means not eating after dinner. Then gradually narrow it to 10 hours over a few weeks. You do not need to jump straight to an 8-hour window. Even a 10-hour window produces significant visceral fat reduction according to the Cell Metabolism study. The most important rule is consistency. Your body's circadian system adapts to regular patterns, so eating at roughly the same times each day amplifies the benefits. A study in the International Journal of Obesity found that participants who maintained consistent meal timing had 19% greater visceral fat reduction compared to those who varied their eating times day to day. Set a daily alarm for your last meal if it helps. Within a few weeks, your body will naturally stop craving food outside your window as your hunger hormones recalibrate. Those are the 5 most powerful morning habits that target and melt visceral fat after 60. Start with even 1 or 2 of these, build consistency, and let the science do the work. Your body knows how to burn this dangerous fat. It just needs the right morning signals to get started. If this video helped you, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another evidence-based health video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.